Welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm Jerry, and this is specifically for a viewer named Mark, this video. But any of you might want this information. It's about my carriage power feed going back and forth along the rail. He's building one, and he just wants some information. I have a series out there. You can check the playlist under power feed. Alright guys, this is something I wanted to do, and one of you asked me some information about my power feed for my carriage going back and forth. You'd like to build it. Mark, this is for you. First thing I'm going to do though is I'm going to see how fast it takes for this thing to come back at 100%. I will slow it down before it hits the end of the limit stops because I don't have brakes on these motors and it will continue to go right through. So let's talk about it here in a minute. Just a second. Ready, set, go. Okay, so here's what we have. Let me show you. Can you see that? Let's get you over here. 11.93 seconds. It's blinking. Now, I want to tell you how long this bed is. My bed is 22 feet. So like I said, my bed is 22 feet long. It took exactly 12 seconds to traverse this rail. And now I'll give you some specs on it, what I have and what I've used. Guys, let's start down at this end. So this is the bracket I built, this in yellow, and I still have the taillight bracket, and I still have the stop bracket. I used number 420 chain. 40 chain would work just fine as well. And if you look, I put a spring in here on a bolt. I just ran a hole through it and stuck the chain through it there. The reason I believe the spring is important is because when you go, now one of you, when I first built, said that spring was unnecessary. Yeah, it doesn't have to be there, but I think it's easier on the motors and the blade. For instance, if you go into a log too quick, it's just not going to bang into it and keep trying to pull. I have stretch here, and let me show you. So if I pull on that chain a little bit, that's going to happen. So from that bracket, to an idler sprocket, to the motor, and to the idler sprocket. Now on this side, I don't have any springs on this end, because this is the return end. It was only the end that I thought about plowing into something. So this is the business end of it. This is just a wheelchair motor. You can find these on eBay. Now, this is made by Electrocraft. They have a website. However, I cannot find a model number or any descriptions on any of these motors. I know how many amps they draw, but that's about it. And so I can't help you with what motor they are. They don't have a brake on them. I bought two of these motors several years ago, even before I even considered building this, just to have them because I thought they were really neat motors. These are geared motors, worm gear I believe in them, and they're very high torque. When I first got this motor, one of the things I tested to see how much torque it was, I just put a vice grip on it and see if I could hold it. I couldn't hold it. You got to keep in mind, these are in those wheelchairs that are carrying people around down the streets, over curbs, etc. So they have to have some pretty high torque, and some people are pretty big that are using these things, and they have no problems pulling these around. So there is one on each wheel. So I used one to pull this whole sled along. I don't have a motor on the other side. It only pulls from one angle, or one side. I haven't had an issue with it racking anything out of square or anything. I don't see any difference than from pushing on the handle or pushing it from down here. So that's the way what I thought about it. All right, so we have the motor. Then I have, on the back of the motor, I have a 420 sprocket. Oops, sorry, don't want to hit the mic on that. And I mounted it on the shaft with a collar. I don't know if I'll be able to get a good picture of it. A lock collar on the shaft. It actually locked, and I drilled through the lock collar to accept that sprocket. So I can make that collar, that sprocket, slip just by loosening the set screw. I've never had to touch that thing and lock down nice and around the shaft. I can't remember the diameter of the shaft. So whatever motor you buy, one of these wheelchair motors, you're going to need to mic that or use calipers, determine what size sprocket. I believe it was, I don't know. I can't recall. I'm not going to even guess. So get that sprocket. Now, the 420 chain, the 400 chain are 1/2-inch pitch. So that will give you an idea of how fast you're going to turn and go down this rail. If I put a bigger sprocket on this, I could go faster. But I'll also lose maybe some power going into the log, but it probably wouldn't hurt a dang thing, to be honest with you. These things have that much power. I've not found a log that it would stop in yet unless I had something bind up. So, okay, so I come along this chain. I have a idler sprocket that I just bolted through here, and I threaded this. These are 3/8 bolts, I believe, shoulder bolts through these sprockets. These sprockets are idler sprockets, so they have bearings in them. So I didn't have to worry about pressing in any bearings in there. Hope that makes sense to you. And I just used a stack of washers to push them out to line them up with the sprocket on here. Then now I know there's guys who've built these without these limit switches. And that, each their own. But I think it's a pretty important, it's not mandatory. It's not mandatory, but I think it's pretty important. It does help me milling logs when I'm down the mill farther, and I don't want it to go all the way home. I put a magnet under here. This trip this. In fact, I'll grab that magnet and show you. So wherever I want this to stop, I put this magnet. So if I want it to stop right there, let's see what happens. Isn't that something? Let's go the other way. So that allows me to work down the mill, and I don't have to bring the mill all the way home each time. So I like that. Or if I walked away from it, it will trip on this. I don't like the mill coming back at 100% speed and slamming into this, because sometimes just the momentum will carry it past it. So I do keep an eye on it, and I do turn it down, or if I'm walking away, I might only bring it back at 50% just so it doesn't run past this. Now, when I used to run this mill at 12 volts, I never had that problem because it just didn't go fast enough. It would always stop on this and not coast past it. But without these brakes, it can coast past it. But they stop pretty quickly. It's really a simple unit. So coming home, that's my limit stop. And that will stop it. And it touches all at the same time. All right, let's give you another look at a different angle. I don't know if you can see, right there is that shaft collar with the nut right there. And I drilled through that and I attached it to that sprocket. There's the limit switch. You can get some model information off of it, the ones I used. And on this side, I just welded this chain connector to the stop that comes with the mill. So there's all kinds of ways to control these electric motors, and I'm not going to get into too much of the electronics of it, only because there's so many ways to run the 12 volts to your motor. I did it just like Mike Festiva. I think if you watch some of the videos, I talk about his video. I actually chatted with him a little bit through the comments about it, and he shows you how to set up a pulse width modulator control unit. It's super simple, guys. Don't let that big term scare you. But it's better than using a rheostat or something like that. You still get the proper voltage to the motor, the way I understand it. So I did it very similar to his, the wiring system. So let me show you how mine's wired up. I'm not really going to show you how it's wired up. I'm going to just show you what my panel looks like. I have a main power on and off right here. Everything goes through an amp meter first. Oh, I also have a fuse up here. This is my up down, but that's not what we're discussing today. This is my throttle, also not what we're discussing today. This area right here is what we're discussing. This is the pulse width modulator. Control unit lives under here. It's a block. Let me get you one, what it looks like. This one's never been opened. Huh. I'd rather not open it, but I'll do anything for my viewers, though. So we'll open this up. Almost anything. This is all it is. And guys, these are really cheap. I think they're like 20 bucks, maybe at the most 30. I believe this is a 60 amp. I don't know if you can see, but you have 4 screws. And if you look under the board, when you take this open to work with it, you will see which screws. Oh, actually, this one says right here. All right. I don't know if you can see this. Motor power. So your 12 volts would come in here, and your motor would go to here. It's that simple. Then you have this control knob for speed, your on-off switch. I switched that switch out, and then your percentage meter. I'll give you a good shot of the box that I used. Let's get this back in there. All right, here's the specs. We have input voltage DC 10 to 55. So I can use even more. I'm using 24 volts. Output voltage linear under load. Input current 60 amp max. Rated current 40 amp continuous. And then it talks about the frequency and supports DC brush motors. Email bosun12, I don't have my glasses on, 88888 at outlook.com. After sales card with some more information on it. Warranty and free gift. I never did anything with it. You're going to need a box to put all this. My first box was just a DeWalt drill motor box. And it wasn't deep enough to house all my electronics at when I added the up-down carriage. So this is just a Harbor Freight Apache box, 3800. And I'm going to say it's 16 by 12, 7 inches high. This works good. And I also, you see what I did? I put a little table on here. When I first built this, I didn't have this real long wire. So I had to walk with this. In year number 2, when I modified it and put the up down and went to 24 volts, that's when I got all this cable that I'm using now. So you can leave this right on here. Now somebody suggested maybe riding with it. And that's what Mike Festiva even does. He rides with his. I keep my battery right here. I have the Briggs & Stratton engine. It's not an auto, it doesn't have a key start. It's a pull start. So I don't have 12 volt power source to charge the battery. So I put a trickle charger on it when I'm done every day. I've only once ran out of battery, and that was, I just kept forgetting to put the trickle charger on it, and I use it for a long day, and it just starts acting funny, going up and down. What else would you like to know, Mark? The limit switches and all the sprockets and chain, you can get those on Amazon. Everything you need. The motors I found on eBay. Mine are Electrocraft motors. And if you have any more questions about it, just feel free to reach out to me. Mark reached out to me on Instagram. That's a great way to reach out to me if you want to get in touch with me. Bigelow Woodcraft as well. And I'm happy with it. Now, this is my 24 volt unit you see right up here. And I run everything on 24 volt except my linear actuator for my throttle. That's at 12 volt. So I got a 12 volt line in here as well. Okay, guys, that'll do it on how I built my carriage power feed. Any questions, hit me up or check out the playlist called Power Feed for the Carriage Power Feed. Something along the lines of that. You'll find it if you go in my playlists. Have a great day. We'll see you at the mill next time.